Hello my lovelies and welcome back to my channel. Just before we begin on today's topic, I want to give a quick shout out to my new subscribers. Thank you for joining my online family and for the comments and everything that I've received. Like I said, I love reading them. So what are we going to be talking about today, guys? We'll be talking about witches, the tragic history, the legend. Are they real? Have I had any personal encounters? We'll discuss all of that today. I've got my cup of tea ready with me. I hope that you do too, and let's just jump right into it. When you think about a witch, what comes to mind? Are you thinking about the old woman in a cabin, stirring a cauldron? Or are you thinking about a young, beautiful woman fighting the forces of evil? Or are you simply thinking about the modern woman practicing neo-paganism and the Wiccan way of life? However you might perceive them or think about them, many cultures around the world still believe that witches and witchcraft are very real, and they believe that they can cause great harm or use their rituals to ignite light. Whatever you might believe, real or not real, one thing that I'm sure we can all agree on is that thousands of women became scapegoats in society and branded as witches and burnt at the stake alive. We can all agree that this was a big injustice and a tragedy in our history. So where did this all come from? Where did our perception of witches come from? Well, witches have been depicted throughout time in Greek mythology and the native tribes around the world, to the Bible. But yet, it wasn't until the Renaissance era that the form of the modern witch was truly evolved. During the 16th and 17th century, witch hysteria took over Europe. Between 1500 and 1660, up to 80,000 suspected witches were put to death. The majority of these women were burnt alive at the stake or were hung to death. So many of these suspected women were innocent victims in this tragedy. They could accuse anybody of being a witch, from your next door neighbor, to the widow, to the spinster, to the lady that was free thinking, to a woman that was using herbal remedies to make herself feel better or others. Anybody could have been victimized and suspected of witchcraft. The scary part is that they would think that these women were in cahoots with the devil. They would search them for the devil's mark, which could have been a mole or a birthmark. So if you had some kind of birth imprint on you, they could ultimately classify you as a witch. These women were tortured to be forced to have a confession. People were in a huge panic because there was a lot of horrible things that were happening at this time, so they were looking for someone to blame. And around this time, a book was published. Pardon me if I say this wrong. It was called Malice Maleficaram, and it basically was a guide into finding, into identifying, and interrogating witches. It was a massive popular book, and it was close to publishing books as the Bible. That is shocking. In Europe, by the 18th century, witch mania started to dial down a little bit, and they actually started to believe that these were just imaginings of peasants. Whilst in Europe, the witch hysteria started to die down, it was a different story in the New World. what we know today as America. The new colonies started to settle, and they got struck by an epidemic of smallpox. They were scared and the atmosphere was tense, so they started to brand witches. What happened to one of our colonies? In Salem, Massachusetts in 1692, a witch hunt began when 2 girls started to display symptoms of fits, convulsions, and delusions. Today we know that this was caused, or possibly caused, by a fungus that they might have ingested, causing them to have delusions. It was really scary because the women would literally contort their bodies in unusual ways. So ultimately, when people started to display symptoms around the community, more and more of them getting sick, the witch hunt began. 150 people were accused of being a witch, and 18 were put to death. This included 6 men. Like in Europe at that time, anybody could have been accused of being a witch, from your next door neighbor to the lady you didn't like. If they didn't like you, they could throw you under the bus and accuse you of witchcraft. It wasn't long after that the witch mania died down, and with that, laws were implemented to protect people from being falsely accused as being a witch. Thank goodness that someone out there had a bit of a light bulb moment and thought for a minute and realized that these killings were not helping anybody. Nothing was getting better because of the so-called witch hunt, and witch mania died down. So, what are we thinking? Are witches real? Are there some people that might be more advanced than the regular Joe? In today's society, there are people, there are women that follow the Wiccan way of life, and they use rituals to connect with Mother Earth and empower themselves. They follow the Book of Shadows, and they do have a motto, and it is harm no one. And they use these spells and rituals to protect themselves from evil or from harm. In other parts of the world, people still believe in witchcraft, and they do believe that there are people out there that can cause a lot of harm and damage to someone by doing voodoo and doing other sorts of dark magic. But as well as that, people do believe again in the power of the elements and being able to protect yourself from such things. What do I believe? Well, I have a bit of a story time for you guys. Whether you believe me or not, that's okay. But it is a memory that will be imprinted in my brain for the rest of my life. If you watched some of my videos, I did mention that for the early years of my life, till the age of 9, I didn't live in New Zealand. I lived in Colombia, where I was born. And we would live in a farm, and it was in a small town. To get to the farm, however, we would have to drive 10 to 15 minutes to get home. But at that time, my mother didn't have a car, so we would walk home, and the walk would be for around 30 to 40 minutes. At this time, the road was gravel, and there was no light, like no street lighting, so it was very dark, and we were walking at night time, and the only light that we had was the moonlight. And we would walk home. I know it sounds crazy, but yeah, we did. As we were getting closer to my house, there was another house, and every time we would walk past that house, I would get this weird feeling, and I would ask Mommy, who lives there? Till this day, I do not know who lived in that farm. But my mom says, well, we don't go there because there are some people there that we don't really want to associate ourselves with, so we don't really go there. And one night, I'm not joking, but one night as we were going through, I started to hear cackling. I'm not joking, like this crazy laughter that was coming from that house. And it was just like, basically like a witch's cackle. And like, it wasn't just one, it was several of them. Like just laughing and laughing and laughing. And I just remember my mom grabbing my hand and walking quickly to our house. As soon as we got home, we shut the door and we locked it, and just my mom was like, oh, it was nothing. It's just the lady that lives there. It was the weirdest experience that I had at that age. I do have other stories, but those are for another video. So that's it from me today, guys. I hope that you guys liked this video. And if you did like it, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to leave me some comments below. I do love to hear them. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.